Okay, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about how you change the volumes in a MIDI file for each track, such that each time you load that file in the future, those volumes are in fact saved the way you intended. So the first thing you need to know about is there are two very important options. First one is in Preferences, and it's called MIDI File Save Mix. For this lesson, just make sure that that is enabled. We'll talk about what it does in the next video that I do. The other option is in Media, and it is under Functions, and it is this option here. So what this option does is when it's not enabled or not yellow, then when the MIDI file is loaded, the volumes that are initially in the MIDI file for each track will be the volumes that will be displayed and played. So that works normally as most people think. However, there's an additional feature where if this is enabled, now what happens is the MIDI file is loaded, but now the volumes for the tracks are taken from the positions of the slider itself. So this can be confusing for people because they'll think that they changed the volume in the track with this option on, and then what happens is it reads the volume from the slider itself. So let me demonstrate how this works. So let's go ahead and let's take a MIDI file, right, and run it. And we'll take a look at the volume, and we'll talk about drums, just one track. So it's at 125. So I'm going to lower this down to 35, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this global yes. Okay, so now what has happened is I have saved that, and let me show you here that that's the case. We'll go ahead and we'll run something else. When I go back and I grab that original modified MIDI file and I take a look at the volumes, you'll see that it is in fact 35. So let me show you this one more time. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to modify that 35 and I'm going to make it 50. So we'll go ahead and we will load that MIDI file to play it. We will modify that volume to be 50. Right? Press save, global, yes. Okay, now when I go back and we'll just reload. And we look at it again, you'll see that it's set to 50. So you see that the MIDI volumes are in fact being saved after you've made a change, and they are being reloaded based on that information. Now, what can be confusing is that if this option is enabled, MIDI mix, then what will happen is when you go to load those volumes, they'll be loaded based on the positioning of the slider. So again, let's focus on drums. So now we know we've saved this as 35. So if we go in and we take a look at and reload this again, oops. Now when I go to take a look at the volumes, you'll notice the drums is at 0. And the drums are at 0 because my slider is at 0. So if I go ahead and let me get out of this, and okay, I'm just going to go ahead and move this slider for drums up a little bit, so it's not 0 anymore. Now when I go to load that same MIDI file, and I go to look at it, oh, I must not have raised it enough. Sorry, let me raise it up more. Okay, now when I go to load that file, you'll see that it's set to 2. Right? So what's happening is every time I'll move it up a little bit more, and I'll go to load that file. We'll take a look at it, and you'll see that it's now 12. Right? I'll do it one more time. So now I'll go ahead and take this. I'll even pick another one and let it play. So now I'll move this up a little bit more. Go back and pick my original one and go ahead and look at it, and now you'll see that it's 42. Okay, so you see what's happening is that is not the volume I have saved in the MIDI file. It's taking the volume from the sliders. If I want the volume from the MIDI file, then I have to go into Functions, turn this off. Now when I go to load that track, it won't matter where the sliders are set, right? So watch. You'll see it's back to 50. That's what we originally saved the volume at, right? Or if I change this now to some other, let's turn this down to 0, and I go ahead and reload that file now again. It's going to come back as 50 because it's ignoring the sliders. There it is, it's 50. So I hope this makes a little bit of sense, and if anything, it gets you a little bit familiar with the fact that there are two options that you have to be aware of that affect how the MIDI file is being loaded after you've made changes to the volumes. So please let me know if this makes sense and if it was helpful.